and does not stick, as the music, ladies and gentlemen, means we are jumping into picks and bans here on LCS 2 between H2K and ROCCAT. Straight out the gate, Vladimir banned, Azir banned. We saw a little bit of Vlad in CSQ, but I was underwhelmed.
Yeah, Kassadar played it in one game. We also have seen it a little bit over in alternate regions. So Vlad, still a teamfight mage, has big burst potential off his E. Important one to note here, the Lucian ban coming out is because Lucian is pretty dominant when you look at his laning phase, and this new Black Cleaver build that hopefully at some point we'll get to touch today, not going to be in this game. Freeze says, I'm confident enough with everything else I've got in my playbook. I don't need Lucian in the game for this as a first pick. That does, however, raise first pick jungle priority right now, because H2K can leave either Kindred or Nidalee up and take it for Jankos if they should choose to want it.
Kindred or Nidalee, two of Jankos' most played champions. He also fell back to the Elise as the pool got pinched a lot more. And both teams taking their times here, with the Bard being the second ban from ROCCAT.
Yeah, do not want Vander to have that. He did bust it out a couple of times and clearly has been working on it. Whoa. Okay, so that's kind of catching me by surprise to see a Jace ban come through.
Unless I'm mistaken, I believe Parang also played that top a lot.
And that's where I was about to go, Trevor, on that one. In the current meta, you wouldn't normally expect this coming out from a Jace, from a any top lane or a mid laner. But the Jace is Parang's champion. You talked about it. Not available for this game.
Parang, famous for his Jace back in Korean Challenger Series. I think we saw it in LPL, but not a lot. It's not something that's super popular. You can't get a quicker lock-in than that. Ryze instant there for Ryu in that mid lane is what we're expecting. So where do ROCCAT go? The jungle pool's not been pinched at all. If you were to put a priority, what do you think they go to, knowing Airwaks has kind of favored the Rek'Sai in the history past?
We're in a real interesting situation, because the Trundle being banned here meant that H2K couldn't take it. ROCCAT would normally want to flex here. So you take your Trundle, you take one other high priority pick, like a jungler, and look to put it down into that flex role, maybe look for support. I think these two Hoverovers would be a fairly safe setup here when you look at the tank setup coming from top lane plus a carry jungler, and it is what ROCCAT go for.
Yeah, so locking in, nothing really surprising just yet. Freeze is going to go for the Caitlyn ADC, got the traps for control, got some tower pushing power, and if you ever wanted to just play dominoes with the opponent towers, that's probably one of the best champions to do so.
Yeah, at this point you've got Caitlyn and Braum. That laning phase is pretty oppressive. Braum kind of sets himself up for an all-in lane, so you poke down with Caitlyn, then you go aggressive with the Braum, get the stun, trap goes underneath. Good luck ever getting out of that scenario. We'll see who ROCCAT look to go for. Ezreal has been a common pick when you look at picks to play into the Caitlyn. You kind of neutralize the lane, drop back, and don't really allow them to harass you down.
All right, so we'll find out if that is the lock-in on the Ezreal. I'm dancing a little bit because Swain and Jhin are the lock-ins. Now, the real question, is that Ekko mid or Swain mid? Because we've seen Swain top.
Well, we've got the dual flex here. This is where H2K have to play this a careful game, because they've also got the Ryze that can go top, can go mid. Swain has seen a lot of play in sporadic bursts here in regions since 6.10. One game in LCK, a couple of games in LPL as well. Very difficult to kill as he goes later and later into the game. But the Jhin pickup perhaps is the most curious, because this is a matchup that we saw yesterday in LCK, I believe, when we saw Jhin into Caitlyn. Jhin doesn't have a range advantage on Caitlyn. Caitlyn still has that longer range. And with the Jhin, you kind of have a lot of abilities that force you to stand still. So you're prone to getting trapped, and you don't have that W available to stun without getting locked down. So there are some tricky nuances coming into that bottom lane.
All right, tricky nuances that Steelback will be navigating on his new team with his new imported support, and not something that we've seen just yet in Europe. The final lock-ins for H2K, Gnar in the top lane, Nidalee for Jankos in the jungle. I think a fairly well-rounded support. They've got strong, engage if Gnar can find a wall, or if you can get a good flash rune prism, but it's difficult to pull off, I feel.
But what I like here is this is H2K highlighting that ROCCAT have gone for predominantly tank-style top, regardless of what they go for. Whether it's the Swain, he wants to build tank, he wants to build resistances, same for the Ekko. So what they do is they say, okay, well, we're going to give Odoamne this Gnar. It'll give us the dominating laning phase and allow us to transition into team fights with some sense of crowd control. Obviously, it's not as reliable as you know, an Ekko flank or the Swain never move that can come out, but still, Gnar is very potent on this patch when mixed with that Rift Herald buff, and if we do see H2K get it, we'll have to watch exactly how Odoamne can dominate a 1v1 as this game continues.
And if there's anybody that's going to dominate the 1v1 and play the map with that Rift Herald buff, I feel H2K are going to have that ability. They rebuilt their roster in spring, but showed the same macro understanding that we saw from 2015. This time around, they've just got the one roster swap, and we'll see how well the team performs with Freeze in the role. There's about 20 seconds left before the cutoff timer for swapping is allowed, and as it stands, it's going to be a Swain mid lane. You know, I think I'm not terribly opposed, because the play pattern from a Ryze is linear. He runs at you, which means your never move is a lot more likely to connect.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, is like a Ryze kind of wants to be moving forward in those scenarios, and it's very hard for him to keep moving through that crowd control. Also very difficult for him to get his damage down. Yes, he can throw a whole load of spells at you, but if you're Swain and you're just kind of healing a lot of it back up, then generally very difficult to kill. And
the natural build path for Swain with the Spirit Visage, not only going to help him survive, but obviously going to help mitigate the damage from Ryze. So maybe Betsy's sniffed out a counter on 6.10. He needs to prove it, though, in-game. And, of course, Parang in that top lane. Ekko into Gnar, what do you think of that matchup?
Ekko into Gnar, generally Gnar in mini-Gnar form tends to just bully him down fairly difficult until you reach that 2-item, and at that point, Gnar tends to have picked up that Rift Herald, and it's a tough matchup. So, still, it's a consistency factor. Ekko in teamfight is going to be a little bit more consistent.
All right, Ekko in teamfights. Let's see if he can land the parallel convergence, or whether Odoamne and his Gnar can Gnar people into the wall. You guys did see the team compositions there just for a brief moment. Jump on Twitter. Let us know who you think is going to be victorious, as there is a brief pause. Load up into Game 1 here on EU LCS 2. It is a problem with Jankos, and I'll expand on that in just a moment or two. I'm taking a look through summoner spells. Another difference, Betsy, Flash Exhaust on his mid lane Swain, whereas Ryu's running Flash Teleport, a little bit more traditional, dare I say.
Yeah, at that point, as soon as the Ryze goes aggressive, you just put that exhaust on him, and suddenly he doesn't do so much damage anymore. So that's one of the reasons for that. I think one of the most interesting things and curious things coming through this draft was both junglers were given top-tier jungle picks. Very rarely in the current meta do you see a Nidalee or a Kindred get through, let alone both. And the reason is, if you're in a situation where it's either let one through or both through, it's better for you in general to leave both through and not get dominated in the jungle matchup.
Yeah, get at least one of those most powerful picks. The alternative is obviously that heavy mid lane pinch. I mean, the Jace, I think you can argue, was targeted towards Parang.
Yeah, it absolutely was.
Removing. But it's not something that we were expecting. So untraditional bans from H2K. We'll see whether or not their scouting pays off, because those untraditional bans may be exactly what you need to put somebody just outside of their comfort zone.
Yes, exactly. I mean, it even is one of those things where you see Jace and then it has to click in your head. It's like, oh yeah, okay, Parang, Jace main. We'll see if he ever gets to break it out, because it doesn't really fit in the current meta, but maybe there's room for it to come through. In this setup, though, he's just playing pretty much that tank Ekko that we're expecting. 6'10", not 6'11", for those of you that are playing on live. Obviously, there have been a number of nerfs on the live service. We are on 6'10".
Correct.
For this week's games.
So let's talk a little bit about the build order that we can come to expect from the Swain, because I think out of all of the champions, he's the only new one to the European LCS stage at the very least. So his very first pick in the LCK actually just last week, like ever. So what are you expecting to see from the build path, or some of the priority picks?
Yeah, so you end up seeing a lot of Rod of Ages, Spirit Visage, into Zhonya's as well, like a big mix of those kind of half and half items that allow you to be tanky, plus give you damage too. All
right, tanky plus damage, survivability plus damage. Keep him alive, that's the goal. Ladies and gentlemen, we are finally onto the Rift here in Game 1 on EU LCS 2. H2K taking on ROCCAT. And it is a best of 2, so teams will swap sides after this. And they're playing for points towards playoffs. All right, early shenanigans. H2K grouping themselves up for a potential invade here. And I think they're going to make their way into ROCCAT's jungle.
Yeah, they're looking for it. H2K even dropped the ward as standard in that mid lane. Look to push further in. They have forced Airwaks out. Ooh, did not quite get the ward, and obviously the vision will still be there, but they knew they were in the top side as well. Look at it on the bottom side, Ryze looking for the wards just to spot out the lane swap. For those of you that maybe saw the patch notes and were like, lane swaps are gone, right? Nope, we've just got a couple of different lane swaps. They tend to last a little shorter duration than we saw previously. None of that 8-minute, everybody's still pushing 4 people against nobody.
So we'll find out if the lane swap can happen, because I feel for ROCCAT, it's going to be a challenge if they go for those head-to-head lanes. You know, H2K have got the tools with the, you know, Ryze into Swain before his ultimate, Gnar, mini Gnar rather, into Ekko. You know, H2K can bully their lanes very effectively if they execute it well enough. And ROCCAT, very undecided, very late to kind of swap back and try initiate this.
And the reason is they just haven't had any vision on the bot lane pairing. You can see as ROCCAT push up to the top side, H2K had already brought Braum and Caitlyn into the middle lane and are now taking them bottom lane. They know they're ever so slightly behind on the race to the lane, but at this point we have the lane swap locked in, and that's going to be pretty tough for Parang right now, because you can see he's going to come to the lane and try and get 1 or 2 CS, but he has to instantly back away and is now on the wrong side of the map to assist in the push.
Oh, it's going to be such a challenge. And with Freeze and Vander, such a good range advantage. They should be able to bully out Parang down bottom. You can see him backing away on the minimap as Ryu and Betsy continue to trade just here on the middle lane.
Yeah, look at Ryze coming into the top side jungle though as well. He's pushing down onto that blue buff, looking to try and interrupt and see if he can get something done here. Gnar and Nidalee are still on that blue buff. I believe it went over to Jankos, looking at that extra experience that he got.
Yeah, we'll find out in just a moment or two.
Jankos got it.
As we can hop around the map. So lane swap successfully initiated by ROCCAT. Despite Parang getting bullied out of that lane, it looks like both towers will be challenged at around the same time.
And the reason is, so Parang just had to teleport up to the top side, and it forces Odoamne to teleport into the bottom lane and look to assist on that tower push. Right now, you can see ROCCAT have got some damage down on the tower, but it's been evened up very quickly by this H2K lineup. Keep in mind, Caitlyn can clear out the minions behind the tower very quickly, and with a Gnar and mini Gnar getting that added damage as well from just having ranged auto attacks very quickly to take down that tower, it's, you know, about an even race between the two. Yeah, maybe a little ahead, actually, for H2K.
Yeah, the question is, what do they do next? Dragon is up and available if H2K want to peel back to secure that one. And I feel like they may just have a few seconds tempo advantage. Minwave pushing up to this top tower, and even Airwaks is starting to move up to this top half of the map. I think he can pick up one of his marks. Gonna double check that. Yep, on mark of the Kindred. And yeah, tower, very, very short difference between the two going down.
So now the question is, do H2K send their duo lane back to the bottom side or to top side? Because we've started to see a little bit more priority on that dragon now, obviously, with the change to the elements, and it forces people to come bottom side. It looks like H2K, with the movements of Caitlyn and Braum in the base, they're coming up to the top side, and they're actually going to give away all sense of dragon control as we go through the first few minutes of this match.
Oh, take a look in the mid lane. Ryu's in trouble. Jankos has come to land the javelin, immediately forced backwards. Airwaks, that's a flash pounce forward. Jankos unable to pick up the first blood, and now he's in trouble. It's Airwaks that gets the kill, continuing to chase down Ryu, and ROCCAT, they're on the board.
ROCCAT are on the board, catching Jankos as he looked to be going over-aggressive in the middle lane right there, and now they've kind of dropped any sense of control they had over the beginning of this game, because now, not only have you given away Dragon priority, you've also given away a death now in this middle lane over to the Kindred, and sadly for Betsy didn't manage to get an assist on that one for himself, but this is going well for ROCCAT as we start.
A great start for Airwaks, refreshes those double buffs, able to get a level advantage, a farm advantage, and obviously the gold and kill advantage in the hands of ROCCAT. This is not something that I would have anticipated coming into the game, considering how good Jankos was during the regular season at securing first bloods for his team.
Yeah, that is a pretty difficult problem to fix here. As you can see, Freeze is lining up against Parang now in this top side. And the Airwaks down in the jungle on the bottom side. Jankos is here. Maybe he wants to try and catch him out.
Airwaks is in so much trouble. He manages to dance over the wall, but it's Jankos that picks up the kill. And that just looked all too easy. Jankos is going to get a lot of damage down to Betsy, and that was just overconfidence, I feel, from Airwaks.
Yeah, overconfidence completely. Jankos now going aggressive into the top side jungle. Hook doesn't quite hit the mark on the bottom side. And Odoamne hops and skips his way away from that one.
Yeah, he manages to make his way out safely. Steelback and Ryze doing the best they can to shove the wave down. So we've got standard lanes looking like they're going to get set up. No, excuse my ignorance. Yeah, it's Odoamne that's hanging out with Vander because Freeze was pushing up to that top lane. Freeze down about 10 CS. And a non-traditional setup, and you can immediately see a swap. Yes, so there we go. Freeze making his way down bottom as Odo's backing out.
Backing away. Vander's not going to be able to do too much on his own here, but look, it's only a small minion wave right now, so they are going to be able to force this one back. And ROCCAT didn't actually have the ability to go for the Dragon on this setup here. They never really had the control over the bottom side because Airwaks got picked off. They were looking to set that up already, and it's kind of ended up in a scenario where there was a fair amount of farm going over to H2K, but they are still down in that AD carry role. Look at it, 46 CS to 32 right now in favor of that Jhin. So they've avoided a lot of that laning phase troubles that we were looking at.
Yeah, it's going to be a difficult situation if Freeze goes toe-to-toe, despite the advantages that Steelback's been able to pick up. The culls are about the same, so no early payout just yet for Steelback. And Parang is finally going to go toe-to-toe now with Odo. We can get a better glimpse of how he's handling himself. Down 15 CS because Freeze was bullying him a little bit when they were going toe-to-toe.
And the problem, though, in that scenario is Freeze didn't manage to get himself a lead at the same time. So that's something we'll have to watch as we go through this. Betsy shows us how good Swain is at clearing out a wave, and Ryu's like, okay, well, I guess I'll just clear the wave afterwards. I'll pop my ult when I know it's safe and keep myself going.
So I feel like that's going to be the name of the game for a little while. Just pushing out the waves, getting that lane control. No real pressure or even thought of the Dragon just yet. Despite the lane swap, despite the fact that H2K could have gone that route, trying to secure the kill instead.
Yeah, trying to secure kills, and speaking of looking to secure kills, I wonder whether Freeze is going to be maxing his trap first or his Q. He's got 2 points in each for now. As he hits that level 7, level 8 mark, we'll start to see the story unravel there, but we've seen a lot of Caitlyn's recently maxing trap, get to 5 traps very quickly, allows you to plump him down in team fights. Odoamne may have found Airwaks on the top side though.
Yeah, but Odoamne is about to go Mega Gnar. The transformation comes down and Airwaks is pinned against the wall, lands respite by a few seconds, just enough time for Ryu to arrive. Kill secured by Odo.
Kill secured, and this is again Airwaks being over-aggressive in the top side of the map. I'm not sure why Airwaks is going so deep into the enemy jungle here. He was looking to try and gank Odoamne. The problem is, you said it yourself, he was getting ready to turn Mega Gnar, and that is the point at which you don't want to be going into a Gnar's lane because he's pretty good at going 1 versus 2 in that Mega Gnar. You can, you know, get that crowd control out, make sure you can secure yourself at least an easy escape.
Especially because Parang wasn't there quickly enough.
Yeah.
No, Airwaks just got jumped on. Someone expected earlier support. Odo has even been gutsy enough to stick around in lane, sitting on about 1,200 goals and the cowl, and just going toe-to-toe with Parang. Really comfortable with the strength of Mini Gnar, and got teleport available. Ryu's TP will be up in a few seconds' time, so H2K, they've got themselves a 1,000 gold lead. They've got themselves a kill advantage. They're going to have a TP advantage.
Oh,
and they've got tools to play with.
Look at Braum setting up for mid. In comes Jankos as well. They don't really want to go right now. Betsy still has his exhaust, still has his flash. If they can get those off him, they may be looking for it because it's not quite time for Swain to be super tanky. And you can see just, fortunately, the Rift Spirit comes across, spots out Jankos. They knew it was coming. Betsy can drop back in the lane.
Yeah, Betsy playing smart enough to avoid the threat. But I think those wards are going to be crucial. If H2K ever shove out their mid lane or go for an invade on ROCCAT blue buff, I think those wards around the banana bush and just behind the wolf camp could open up opportunities for the double TP composition.
Yeah, it's always dangerous playing against double TPs, especially when you push forward with your bottom lane. That's why Airwaks is around this bottom side, hovering around just in case this fight ended up kicking off. Doesn't have his ultimate available quite yet, but that Kindred ult will come up fairly soon. It's Ryze this time that is out on the map. Has been spotted by a ping.
I think we have to highlight Steelback out farming Freeze by a significant margin. That's correct. 20 CS to expand on that as Ryu. It's caught by a never move. Betsy's the one that's in trouble, and support from Ryze and Airwaks comes in, but 76 CS to 93. And Steelback's already got that BF sword versus the recurve bow, so damage potential definitely in favor of Steelback.
Keep in mind, though, nothing really has disrupted Steelback's laning. He's been able to sit fairly confidently, first in the top, now in the bottom side. Did not have to move across to mid lane. At one point, Freeze came mid, pushed it out. Freeze has been kind of dueling as well at the same time, so that's the reason he's behind. But as you kind of allude to, it'll be fine for ROCCAT in this scenario to say, okay, well, we've got our Jhin as a fair lead right now. Let's see where this can go. And you kind of brought to attention BF Sword already on Jhin. Caitlyn, typically you want to go BF Sword into the Hurricane. Couldn't afford the BF Sword at any point in the game so far, so going straight for that Hurricane. Gonna look for damage later.
Oh, Betsy forced to flash already. Glacial Fissure goes down, slows him in place, but Airwaks, he flashes for his life as well. H2K, they pull the trigger, get themselves 2 summoner spells. They also picked up that Ocean Drake just a moment ago. So all control in favor of H2K.
Yeah, control goes in their favor, and as you mentioned, Ocean Drake, it was, you know, decided to, they decided to take it down because there was just a small window that Jankos knew, just with a little bit of assistance he can take it out. Ocean Drake is a fairly easy Drake to take on its own, so you don't really need to skirmish before it, and for ROCCAT, it's not worth dying over either. It's kind of one of those buffs that it's nice to have, but until you start stacking up multiple Ocean Drakes, doesn't really show its prominence.
We'll find out if that sustain actually works in favor of H2K, because the pace of the game has been relatively slow. You know, the lane swap was initiated by ROCCAT. They had that late rotation from bottom to top, and even secured first blood, but Airwaks just overstepped. I think touched too confident.
Twice.
Yeah.
Twice. And, you know, I wonder whether it stems from some of what we've been hearing just in general. The ROCCAT team and organization very confident about this lineup. Very confident. You know, when you speak to anybody, they say, oh, you know, ROCCAT are saying that they're going to do very well. So maybe that's now bleeding into game. And now Airwaks is like, okay, well, we know we're good. We're just going to go in. We're going to get in their face and invade. So it hasn't been the best of starts for Airwaks himself.
You know, I think you've got like 2 nuggets there, because I feel ROCCAT as a team and an organization always have believed in their players. And
of course,
very similar in the spring split. You know, they took down Vitality day 1. And unfortunately, that was the highlight of the split for them, because it struggled from there on out. But Airwaks as a jungler, he always found those opportunities. Well, think about him as Betsy's in trouble, has the support of Airwaks, lands respite will buy some time, teleport comes down from Parang, and will be equaled out by Odo. Defensive flashes by H2K until Odo arrives. Boomerang won't slow anybody. The curtain call hasn't been fired just yet. Steelback's looking for targets, shooting on the back line. Their sentence connects the mini Gnar. The final shot from the curtain call just tags Freeze on the way out.
Nobody ends up falling in a fight. Everybody pretty much involved in this one. Odoamne wasn't Mega Gnar, so couldn't really get any crowd control. Still, ROCCAT smartly conceding part of that fight. As soon as Odoamne's teleport completed, the rest of ROCCAT shift back into their own territory. Say, we don't want to take this fight. It's not worth it at this point for us. We already have ourselves some slight leads coming out of the laning phase, so we're just going to drop back by a little bit more time for this Swain. You already saw the game plan. Swain soaks up damage, gets the health back. Kindred ult goes on, he gets all the health back again. And suddenly, you have to kill ROCCAT multiple times.
Yeah, and that's just a Swain. Before you think about the ultimate there from Ekko coming down as well. What was Chrono Break? I was doubting myself. It's like, that's Zillion's ultimate, but no.
It's okay. It's been a while, Trev.
Yeah, it really has. Chrono Shift is Zillion's one. Regardless of that, it's a difficult to kill team composition. The Swain, plus the Kindred, plus the Ekko, plus the long range of Jhin means it's going to be a challenge, but ROCCAT also have to execute. They also have to find the CC and position correctly, which I think they've done well in the team fights, of which we've just seen 2 or 3 small skirmishes.
Yeah. So Airwaks, he's going to give us the opportunity to peek a look at the next element. It's going to be Ocean again, but it's not bot lane we're focused on. It's Parang in the top lane.
All right, no stun needed just yet. Actually, not even going to tag H2K. Jankos is going to get some damage down, but Parang quite literally is able to walk away.
Holds his nerve very well. You know, some people might have flashed in that scenario. Parang knew that he was already clear, and if they had engaged on him, parallel conversion was there as well to buy him that extra time. But we're into a very delayed second phase of a weird scenario where we've got jungler and solo laner now pushing out on the second turrets. For both teams, they're going to fall at roughly the same time as well.
All right, so towers traded, 2-2. Gold is as even as it's going to be. Betsy takes a lot of damage from Ryu before being forced away. There's support coming in the form of Airwaks. And if you look at the CS differences, there's a little bit of pressure onto Steelback, but not enough of a minion wave to work with. And Steelback's up 30 CS over Freeze.
But look at the room they have to concede here. Airwaks cannot really be affording to, can't afford to be standing there because the trap line in mid lane forces his team to come around the side. Also gives us the answer on what is Freeze going to be maxing. 5 traps on the Rift means a trap max at level 9 from Caitlyn. This is very frustrating to deal with, because what it means is H2K can now just stack up until Freeze has 5 traps ready. You push towards the tower, lay them all down in a line. Suddenly, ROCCAT cannot afford to push up anywhere close to them to try and deny a tower push. Sieging becomes so much more easy.
It really does. And H2K have shown time and time again that they can play the map. They've farmed themselves advantages in the top lane for Odo, in the jungle for Jankos, and a minor one for Ryu, though should be evened out shortly. Interesting to note that Betsy is the man that's going toe-to-toe with Ryu down bottom. The natural kit can obviously work in Betsy's favor, but the moment Ryu decides to TP away, all of a sudden ROCCAT have to deal with a 4-on-5, and that's going to be scary. This is in trouble. Oh, he walks straight into Ryu. Defensively flashes away. Rune Prison comes down on Airwaks. Glacial Fissure will split the river. Vander's now the one that's in trouble, and it's Betsy that gets the kill before the final curtain call is called. And Ocean Drake is the challenge now from ROCCAT.
Yeah, at this point, H2K may just want to give this one. Yes, they had one Ocean Drake to start, but is it worth this fight? Ryze is still low. They may be able to pick up one. Jankos goes in!
He doesn't find it, though. It's secured by Steelback. The smite's not enough. Freeze is rooted in place and is able to walk away with his life. ROCCAT get a kill, get a dragon, and get out alive.
And the major difficulty for H2K in that fight, it looked so good for them. Odoamne was just turning into Gnar as that fight started, but his teleport was not available. It was about 10 to 20 seconds away. You can see now it is up. That would have been a great fight if H2K could have taken it, but ROCCAT managed to catch them while they don't have those summoners available, take themselves a dragon. H2K just answered with a turret, though.
I think, though, if you're H2K, you're happy with the turret.
Yes, you are.
Yes, you give up the kill of a goal, the gold of a kill. The stats of the Ocean Drake are not massively worrying. And overall, you open up that map. Here's a replay that set everything up.
So look at it. Gnar up in the top lane does not have the teleport available yet. And as we fly through the replay, Vander gets picked off just from being out in the middle of that team fight. From here, though, ROCCAT, this is a pretty simple dragon take from them. There was a moment where Ryze perhaps could have fallen in this, but Jankos was, you know, concerned more with the dragon, I think rightfully so, and it's actually Jhin that picks it up there. So just a little bit of mistiming overall, but couldn't quite get the steal away. ROCCAT at least will have that Ocean Drake as this game goes further.
And it's interesting to see a challenge over that second Drake. It's interesting to see, you know, Jankos really committing to that steal, pouncing over the wall, looking to set it up. I would have expected if it was a different Drake, maybe.
Right.
But I guess if you start stacking that buff, the value goes up exponentially.
Here's the thing, Trevor, is you say it's a challenge, but it's more H2K standing around just to give Jankos a little bit of support when he tries to make that steal. There was no real world where H2K were about to throw their entire lineup just for an Ocean Dragon. There wouldn't have been a 4v5 fight in that scenario from the rest of H2K. It was on Jankos, he had his flash available, and that's where the Dragon priority changes, because if that's Infernal, or if that was Mountain Drake, that may very well have been a 4v5 attempt from H2K once Odoamne came down, just from how ROCCAT had taken a little bit of damage.
Yeah, the value would have been significant. As we approach 20 minutes, Rift Herald has slain the Rift Herald and it's returned to the Rift Herald home, and nobody's picked it up, disappointingly.
Right, and this is one of the things that we kind of have come to expect. There are some games where Rift Herald just goes untaken. The reason that I find that, you know, a bit weird in this game, just from how we saw CSQ evolve, was that when we saw Gnar's picked, typically you'd see it with a Black Cleaver, you'd see them pick up the Rift Herald, and you'd dominate a 1v1 split push style. For H2K, they've realized fairly quickly that that's not the role they want Odoamne to play here. They need him in the team fights as their crowd control. ROCCAT have decided that they just need the Baron at 20 minutes. There's 3 people on this. There's no vision for H2K either. H2K are too busy pushing in the bottom lane. This Baron has already gone to ROCCAT.
There is nothing that H2K can do. They will arrive far too late. 1,000 hit points. The champions that cannot be killed secure the buff. uncontested. Betsy's even going to make it out alive.
Man.
And that was fantastic.
We spoke about confidence maybe bleeding into the game. That is an example of where it will pay off for ROCCAT. They say, hey, look, H2K, they've got people in the bottom lane. They've got their jungler down here. They're never going to be able to contest this if we start it. And the ROCCAT lineup are fairly tanky. You've got yourself a Swain. You've got yourself these champions that don't really take too much damage in these small, you know, exchanges.
And natural sustain
with
as well.
a Baron. Exactly, natural sustain. So get the Baron, and now you've got yourself in a situation where H2K really are going to struggle to push.
So H2K have to deal with Baron-empowered minions. Freeze has actually picked himself up the BF Sword, Pickaxe, and the Executioner's Calling. Finally starting to get some attack damage to work in conjunction with that Hurricane. But Steelback, plus 40 CS. He's got the Reaver as well as a Rapid Fire Cannon completed, and it's ROCCAT that are sieging the middle lane, and Betsy had already shoved out the top.
And that Executioner's Calling is an important one, because that's to deal with the Swain. You have to inflict those grievous wounds. Yep. And I like prioritizing it this early. Freeze already knows that he's not going to be the main carry in these fights. Unless people are stepping on traps all the way through the fight, he just purely doesn't have the damage. So get the grievous wounds onto the Swain and stop him from healing while Ryu deals the damage in these fights. And maybe they can get later into the game when Caitlyn has 3 items completed to be able to deal with everybody. But right now, I like that smart itemization.
And we'll find out if it works out, because there's a lot of pressure on Ryu to burn through a lot of ROCCAT HP bars. You know, Hex Drinker on Airwaks, Sunfire Cape and Cowl on Parang. I don't know, it's looking scary for H2K.
And the other thing that looks scary here for H2K is the fact that they have to somehow deal with Steelback as well. And without a very good flank from Odoamne coming into these fights, somehow you've got to go past the Ekko. You've got to go past the Swain, who's going to be dealing damage and slowing you all the way through that fight. So good luck getting to Jhin with Curtain Call active deep into the fight. So tough team fights coming out for H2K for the next, 10 to 15 minutes.
It gets complicated even more when you look at the ward line. Yeah. For the first 15, 20 minutes of the game, H2K had multiple wards inside ROCCAT's jungle. Betsy was just jumped on there by Ryu, and Ryu gets a decent trade, but Betsy should be able to just sustain his way back up. With that Ravenous block, never moved, blocks down Ryu. Jankos is picking a fight with Airwaks. It's a flash away, the Wolf comes out, and Airwaks, he's rooted, in trouble, no respite! Airwaks goes down, they turn their attention to Betsy. Betsy's running out of mana, and Odo should be able to run him down. The Hyper, the Excited, the Hop not even needed, and that's 2 easy kills for H2K.
It's ROCCAT just overextending on the top side, not respecting the ability of H2K to get to that scenario. They were looking at one TP user in front of them and saying, we're fine here, right? No, because Odoamne comes across, is able to deal the damage to take them down, and Airwaks got caught by a big spear that came from Jankos, and that's what initiated that entire thing, because I don't think H2K wanted to fight that without that burst of damage happening initially. Now H2K, they're going to push mid against the Baron buff.
Oh, Odo is held onto the Gnar. Not going to use it just yet. Glacial Fisher buys some time, keeps throwing out those boulders. Ryze is very easily cut down. Parang pinned against the wall, has access to that chrono break. Nobody gets sucked down by the deadly flourish. Jankos pounces forward. The dash back from Parang deals damage enough to take down Freeze, but not enough for more than that. Airwaks is dancing with arrows backwards, and ROCCAT, they get themselves at least a kill, but lose 2 in the trade.
Yeah, they lose 2 in the trade. I mean, in that scenario, had Betsy been there, that was a very dominant fight with the damage coming from him. The problem was he wasn't there, and that allowed H2K to stick around in that fight, even being on low health bars, and clean up the rest of the ROCCAT lineup. And from there, the Baron buff has expired now on ROCCAT, I believe, and that is going to call an end to some of the tower pushing that we've seen from them.
But you start to see the nuances of the strengths of teams. ROCCAT, early game good, cheeky play, and we'll talk about how they use
here.
this.
By the way, Parang catches Vander and catches Jankos. Some of the damage coming from Jankos would have been better as a initial burst. Gets denied by that stun here. In comes Ryu from the side. Still has his TP available, didn't even need to use it in this engage, so manages to get himself into the fight, tidy things up. And ROCCAT, despite taking an early Baron, still find themselves behind in gold.
And it's because they didn't use it quite as effective enough. Yet again, Airwaks or Betsy somewhat caught out of position. 1-3-1. Airwaks, after getting first blood, has fallen further and further behind in CS, down 40. And is obviously not in the right place at the right time. I think that's what it boils down to. You know, seeing how Betsy got flanked and caught from behind, maybe he was sticking around to try and draw Airwaks to him. Tad overconfident, I feel.
Important itemization though completed. Zhonya's onto Swain. He will remain to deal damage during the Zhonya's proc as well. Look at Ryu down in the bottom side, has his TP available, will be pushing out, but Parang on the top side doing an identical move, has his TP too. Look
at the ward coverage though from H2K. There are more options in the jungle that if ROCCAT go the wrong direction, Ryu can make use of. The moment H2K push forward.
But it also says that Ryu is not as safe as he thinks he is because they have none on the bottom side.
No, they do not. Ryu's going to carry on running, has a gigantic shield, but Airwaks is looking to chase him, flashes away, and Airwaks picks up the kill. May even open an opportunity. I don't know if Dragon was 250. No, Dragon was not taken. Will respawn shortly.
Yeah, will respawn shortly. And you were mentioning the ward line, and as you were saying it, I'm like, but what I'm looking at from this map is better split push on the top side, because that's where H2K have their wards down. That is the covered path to make sure Ryu doesn't get ganked and died. And sure enough, as soon as Ryu pushes up past the river line, suddenly ROCCAT go, okay, well, let's just gank in bot lane. We've easily got this 2v1.
Game 1 of the summer split in the new studio on the new LCS Studio, and you can see some of the nerves. You can see some of the mistakes, some of the shakes maybe from the players. A little bit of overextension has happened. It's 27 minutes. H2K I still think very comfortable. Up 3.5K. They've got a strong front line in Gnar and Ryu. Odo and Ryu, rather. And Freeze has been bought all the time he needs to farm his way to relevance.
Double TPs are up though right now for H2K, so this is their time to utilize both side lanes. They can afford to push out. They're not going to allow ROCCAT to do the Baron play again. That's not going to happen. Jankos is not going to go bottom lane and give that massive opportunity over again. You can see Steelback and Ryze just going through that jungle as a two-man pair, looking to see if they can get a hook into the stun from Jhin and maybe catch somebody out. It hasn't been quite as successful yet.
No, not just yet. And I think Ryze has done a good job of playing that sort of backline Thresh. It feels like he's primarily there as that lantern bot, which is, you know, a role that gets assigned to Threshers periodically. Airwaks gets caught by a javelin. Just cheeky here from Jankos as he interrupts. Hourglass and Ryze. And still 2 yellow trinkets on the side of H2K. Despite some of the advantages you can have from those blues, so look at the vision around Baron.
We saw some changes to blue trinkets as well when it comes to the cooldown a couple of patches back, so we are starting to see a few more yellow trinkets, and we're starting to see H2K attempt a Baron, but out comes the blue trinket that you were talking about. And suddenly, they're rumbled, they got to back themselves away. Trapline has been advanced in the middle lane now. You can see Caitlyn has pushed them forward over that halfway mark. You can see just in front of the ROCCAT lineup. 5 traps easily covers any area with a turret, and, you know, pretty handily covers an open lane as well. You have to kind of Mission Impossible your way through a trap line and try and pixel edge it through if you don't want to get caught out by them in the open ground.
What a terrifying place to get caught, especially if Ryu's nearby. So look at this. All of this hard work that H2K have invested in Vision, gonna slowly be pushed back. ROCCAT group themselves up, Betsy and Airwaks holding hands, invading again. This time, doesn't look like anyone can punish, although they shouldn't stick around too long.
So if H2K were looking for options here and ROCCAT stayed in this top side and stayed pushed up, there is a ward very deep in the lane. But Vision comes through, Vander got spotted out, Nevermove will block their way in. But it's a Mountain Drake. First one we're seeing here.
On the LCS. That's going to help out Jankos and Ryu the next time they try that cheeky battle.
Yeah.
If they decide to.
I'm waiting for us to see a Cassiopeia, because then we can be the Viper in the mountain. Sadly, she's not played all that often. A couple of games since 610, but nothing too much.
And then come back as the zombie, hopefully. There's the 4 dragons that have been taken. A fair amount by 30 minutes, actually. So the next dragon will be spawning.
The reset.
Yeah, next one will be spawning after 35, which will make it that Elder Dragon. And outside of the damage buff, Selfie amplifying a huge amount. It looked like Steelback was able to secure that red with his flourish. And Baron is now the name of the game. H2K fully committed to it. After that small misstep earlier, ROCCAT have challenged the vision. And they seem content to just play the side lane farm.
Yeah, the interesting thing about Baron compared to Elder Drake, I'm not going to get to say this. Freeze!
Oh, the death sentence connects onto Vander. Airwaks is looking for Freeze. Freeze is down already. Lamb's respite the moment after he's killed. That keeps Airwaks alive. And Freeze caught out of position, taken down, and ROCCAT on the siege.
Yeah, that's Freeze just being out on his own. Nobody was really around to keep him alive. Vander couldn't do enough, and the rest of H2K couldn't group in time. ROCCAT have got a very difficult team to deal with.
Ooh, that was so close. Odo's able to literally hop over the death sentence. Vander's looking to push forward. No Fissure, no Flash, no Ignite. And ROCCAT in a 5-on-4 for another 15 seconds. They're content to siege.
Yeah, H2K managing to hurdle the hook in that scenario. Betsy looking for a flank from the side, was trying to get himself in there, but look at it, ROCCAT are being relentless in trying to get this tower. Parang catches Odoamne right in the middle of his jump animation.
Death sentence comes down, the box is out, but Ryze is the one that bites the dust. Their focus turns over to Parang and Airwaks. They're being chunked down over the line. A gigantic Gnar against the wall as Steelback has peeled away. Curtain Call will secure a damage, will secure a kill with the help of Airwaks, and ROCCAT have got themselves 3. But here comes Freeze, trying to put ROCCAT on ice.
Never
move comes down, it's an ace. ROCCAT take down H2K.
ROCCAT have so much damage in these fights. That curtain call hitting time and time again, and then Betsy comes in to clear up with the never move. ROCCAT's composition has so much crowd control that it's difficult to avoid, that the damage is always going to be able to follow up, and that's going to allow ROCCAT to take themselves the first inhibitor of the summer split.
On EU LCS 2, taking it down. ROCCAT in an advantageous position, gonna start the recall inside H2K's base. Stress, here's a replay of that fight. Initially, it looked like a lot of damage onto ROCCAT.
Yeah, I mean, Ryze just took the brunt of that damage here, and ROCCAT, they were split focus at first on the turret. It's here as Steelback pulls back in the fight. Airwaks is just dealing fight from the side, and here is what makes Swain so difficult to deal with. Betsy in the middle of the fight, taking all the damage from Freeze. Freeze could not avoid that, didn't choose to avoid it, and gets locked down with the never move in for the double kill.
So much credit to Steelback getting out of dodge, rooting Freeze in place, and this puts ROCCAT in a fantastic position. But they had Baron at 20 minutes, and we're still down on gold after that timed out. So ROCCAT have got to be a little careful. Gigantic minion wave in the bottom lane. I'm looking at teleports. Nobody has theirs up or available. And we're well into the late game now, as Airwaks is going to get caught out. Lamb's respite, forced to buy some time. Ryu's pinned out of range. He's taken down with the help of Airwaks. Now ROCCAT looking to put down more hurt. Final shot, turn their focus to Vander. He's taken down as well. Steelback's 2,
Watch for Betsy.
0 and 8. Betsy's looking for the flank. There's no flash. Never move into Crepify. Look for the root. They've caught themselves a mega Gnar, and Odo's pushed them away, only to buy time. Airwaks finds Freeze, sends out the wolf, and takes him down. Airwaks still alive. Takes out Jankos. ROCCAT can win the game. GA is popped. They kill Odoamne, and ROCCAT may pull off the first surprise, if I can go that far. They're on to the Nexus, taking down H2K. And from the get-go, ROCCAT had a game plan, executed it well, and they pick up the first victory in the best of 2.
Well, we heard from people that ROCCAT were being very confident about how they were coming into the summer split, and once again, first game of the regular split, and it's a big win already on the board for ROCCAT.
Gigantic smiles on the face of ROCCAT. And there's going to be a lot to talk about from this game, because ROCCAT had a very good call to take that Baron. You know, it was safe, it was clean, and then they made a mistake pushing it. H2K played so safe, they gave ROCCAT the opportunity to find a pick.
Yeah.
You know, I don't feel H2K pushed proactively enough when they had that big gold lead.
So one of the problems for that was that Freeze on Caitlyn was always behind on CS, always behind on itemization as well. So even in the fights, if Ryu wasn't getting damage out, they just didn't have enough to contend. There were a couple of key fights, the one around Dragon, where Odoamne didn't have his TP. Those kind of things really cost H2K in this game, and credit to ROCCAT for picking up on that, because they had good engages at several parts where they knew H2K couldn't answer.
Talking about answers, Steelback versus Freeze, game 1. Steelback comes out swinging on a champion that we're not seeing a huge amount and really puts on a great performance. Admittedly, I think his front line brought him all of the freedom to do that. You know, it is a team game at the end of the day. Freeze, on the other hand, that catch in the middle lane, that's something that we're going to have to review. Something we're going to have to look at again, because how much of that is a Freeze mistake and how much of that is an H2K not warding mistake? You know, there's more questions than just how did it happen.
Yeah, there are a lot of questions, and now, of course, we talk about being in a best of 2. We've got to reassess picks and bans, because do you let that Swain through? I'm not so sure if I'm H2K. It's a very weird scenario, though.
It's interesting, right, because Swain ended up being a neutralizer to Ryze. I didn't necessarily feel he was a counter or gave him the advantage, but it definitely managed to keep him holding true. Yeah,
and is that kind of frontline champion, which is saying you basically shall not pass at that point. Nobody can get through him to get to Steelback, and Steelback just outputs the damage at the back. A lot of damage done by Steelback when you look exactly at those fights and how he cleaned up, but just an impressive performance by ROCCAT overall.
So that's a few interesting questions, because everyone loves to make these sweeping statements when it comes to a single game and a best of 2. But ROCCAT taking down H2K, it is a complete similar story to Spring Split, where ROCCAT took down Vitality. They were the underdogs. They were unexpected to do it. Now they've done it in game 1. How do they do on the blue side? What are they changing? And is this a sign of things to come, or is this just nerves and rust from H2K?
I mean,
sweeping statement. Come on, man.
I don't want to make a sweeping statement, because like I feel like ROCCAT, I don't feel like it was just H2K's mistakes in this game. Like I think it would be very easy to make a sweeping statement if you said, you know, H2K, they made a mistake, they'll be fine. I actually think this game was ROCCAT playing a composition that H2K couldn't manage to deal with and actually executing it for the most part well. There were early game issues for ROCCAT, but if ROCCAT can tidy up those early game issues, I don't see any reason why this couldn't be a 2-0.
I definitely think when you look at this game in particular, it was about which team could punish your opponent's mistakes. Yeah. And I think, maybe I'm being a little harsh, but I think H2K not trying to push to those inner turrets, you know, playing so safe to buy Freeze time, I think that ended up hurting them, because it allowed all of that freedom for ROCCAT to take a Baron, to play around the map, to set up a pick. And I think one of the things that differs from this game to a lot of what we saw in the CS qualifiers is the role of Gnar in this game. Odoamne still had the damage, still had the you know, ability to push, but didn't want to, couldn't, because the rest of the team didn't really have that setup for him. So didn't prioritize any sense of the Rift Herald, didn't prioritize split push itemization either. And from there, it meant that you didn't have one strong lane that's already winning that can allow you to push. And you're kind of trying to play on side lanes without that advantage, and that's a very difficult thing to do. Even more interesting, because not only the champion, but H2K had double teleports. H2K had an additional tool to play those side lanes, to play the pressure game, and you know, they did. They had a 4,000 gold lead, but it didn't mean anything, because it never equated into absolute map control. And that's the problem, because